Hi, this is Ken McCarthy of Jazz on the Tube, and welcome to our podcast series. As our longtime listeners know, we like to talk about the people who are, quote, behind the scenes, producers, educators, chroniclers, people who create the context for us to hear the music. And we've got a great guest today, and I'm really excited about talking with him. And as a way of introduction, again, longtime listeners know that we have from what I can tell, the world's largest collection of annotated jazz videos, searchable and indexed online with accurate information. Sometimes YouTube's not so accurate, and we do our best to make sure that the content that we put on about each video is accurate. A couple of years ago, we noticed that it was hard to find listings of jazz clubs when we were traveling, and we discovered there was no online directory up to date and comprehensive that covered all jazz clubs. So we took on the task of doing that, which we maintain today. We did the same thing for jazz festivals, and we've done the same thing for jazz education programs. So if you're looking for information in any of those three areas, we are the place to go because we've decided to focus on it and make sure that the information is accurate and contemporary. The one area that we haven't touched so far, because we can only do one thing at a time, is the world of jazz cruises. And today we've got the best possible source on that topic. So I'd like to introduce everybody to Michael Lazaroff. Welcome, Michael.
Welcome. Thank you very, very much, and it's an honor to be here.
Well, it's really great to have you in particular talking on this topic. The name of your company is Entertainment Cruise Productions, but people probably better know you for the Jazz Cruise, the Smooth Jazz Cruise, Blue Note at Sea, and a whole bunch of other things. What I'd like to do in the beginning, if we could, is get into a little bit of the history, because I find it personally fascinating how it went from an idea to a small beginning and then the transformation that brought you to where you are today. So could you tell us a little bit about how this whole enterprise got started?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Many, many years ago, Norwegian Cruise Line had a jazz cruise. It began in the early 70s, went on for a long time. It was on the SS Norway. It was never a full ship charter. A full ship charter means where someone takes over the entire ship and every passenger is there for that purpose. But it was about half the ship, and since the SS Norway was a very large ship, there were probably 1,100 or so passengers every year. The cruise was produced by the cruise lines, Norwegian Cruise Lines, but there were 4 or 5 travel agent type folks who were the main providers of guests, and one was from England, one was from Chicago, one was from Arkansas, one was from California, and one was from St. Louis, which is where I am from. And this went on for years. In 1999, NCL, Norwegian Cruise Lines, announced that they were terminating all of their themed cruises, including their jazz cruise. And I got a phone call from the woman in St. Louis who had spearheaded efforts to sell cabins on this particular cruise. In fact, she was the leading salesperson of cabins for that cruise, to the point where they would consult with her, NCL that is, would consult with her as to ports of call and lineup, etc. And she told me that she wanted to be the first person in the world to charter a whole ship for jazz cruise. I knew that she was 70 years old at the time. 70.
Wow.
So I said, tell you what, why don't we meet and we can talk about it. So we had lunch, and she told me what her vision was, and I looked across that table and I said, Mom, do you really know what you're doing here? Because the woman was my mother, Anita Berry. And that's how this whole thing got started. So we went to Chicago and met with the other 4 or 5 people who were the leaders of this program. And Mom laid out her plan to charter a whole ship and go forward. And she said, we'll all be partners and we'll all work this together and it'll be wonderful. And not one of those people was even remotely interested. And in fact, they basically told her that she was out of her mind and that she was going to lose a bunch of money and that this didn't make any sense whatsoever. So we got on the airplane flying from Chicago to St. Louis, and I asked her, and I already knew what the answer would be. I said, well, what are you going to do now? And she says, well, now I'm really doing it, and I'm doing it by myself. So we chartered a ship, 1,245 passenger ship with Holland America Line, the Maasdam. We did our first ever marketing campaign, which was, and you're probably too young to even know what this is, but we had a mimeograph machine. Did you ever use a mimeograph machine?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. I remember the smell of the ink.
I was just about to say, I used to love the smell of the ink. My mother was concerned that I would turn into an addict. But anyway, we sent that out, and the cruise was sold out in weeks. And so,
really?
Just like the movie Jaws, we got a bigger ship, and the rest is history.
You sold 1,200 out in just a matter of weeks.
Yes.
Incredible.
Yeah. Well, Mom was smart. She enlisted the artists. She, told them that this amazing cruise, which had gone on for years and years, and it had Mel Torme and Joe Williams and all kinds of superstars, that would never happen again unless we all got together and we did this cruise. And so it was sort of a joint effort, if you will. From there, doing a cruise, chartering a ship, producing a cruise, programming a cruise and stuff, there is no Cornell School of Cruising. The only way to learn this is to actually do it. And so we developed, developed a expertise in running cruises, which led to us doing all kinds of other cruise programs. And in the 18 years that we've been doing this, we have produced more cruises than anybody else in the world, actually. And
really?
We're no other company, no other private company has produced more themed cruises than we have. And so it's kind of an interesting way to live. Yes.
Yeah. Now, when you talk about a jazz cruise, and then I look at the lineup, it's really as good as any festival lineup that I've ever seen. In other words, it's a cruise, but it's a festival at sea in terms of the sheer volume of artists that you've got on these cruises. It's kind of amazing.
Yeah, I'm going to bicker with you just a bit. What I'm going to say to you is, in today's world, I'm not sure there is a festival out there that has more and better jazz performers than what we do, because so many of the festivals these days have lots of other kinds of music. Maybe I just returned from the Monterey Jazz Festival, and they clearly have a spectacular lineup, and it is a predominantly jazz folks, but on the jazz cruise, we have 100 jazz musicians, and we have a lineup that is amazing. The other thing that I noticed when I was at the Monterey Jazz Festival, they had 12 headliners performed in the main stadium, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And out of those 12, 11 of them have either performed on our cruises or are about to perform on our cruises. So, so not only do we have volume, but if you look at who we have, I mean, we've had Herbie Hancock, Chick Corea, all of the top guys, and if you look at the lineup for the jazz cruise in terms of straight ahead jazz, it's an amazing lineup. The reason I say this is because that's our focus. It's yes, it's a cruise, and there's some wonderful, wonderful cruise aspects to what we do, and we have a lot of fun, and there are certain events that you can do on a cruise that you can't do on land, but that is the gingerbread. The meat and the potatoes is music, and we have our own production team and sound team, and the ship that we now use has amazing venues, and the artists love the way the sound is, because if our job is to produce and to present the best possible music experience that you can have, and I don't mean the best possible music experience that you can have at sea. I mean the best possible music experience, period. And so that's our goal, and that's what we're trying to do. The cool thing about a cruise, someone says, well, why is listening to jazz on a cruise better than a festival? And I said, well, that's easy. These guys are on for the whole week, and therefore they mix and match and share stages and do shows that you couldn't possibly see. We have a on the upcoming jazz cruise. We have a big band, our own big band, which is directed by John Clayton, and and one night we're going to have the following trumpet players perform together: Byron Stripling, Arturo Sandoval, Randy Brecker, Tony Cadlick, James Morrison, Sean Jones, and I'm sure that I'm missing some others. Well, you can't do that on land. I mean, to get them all together for one night would be cost prohibitive, but they're on the ship, and they love doing this kind of stuff. So you're going to see pairings, configurations, events on the ship that you're not going to see anywhere else, just by the business model of the fact that these guys are all together for a week. You know, festivals, they come, they go. Sometimes they aren't even in the same city during the festival. You know, the one guy's on for one day and then leaves, and then the other guys come in. But that's not how it works on a ship.
Gotcha. And this is, I mean, you mentioned something that might sound trivial to listeners, but the idea that you've got your sound worked out, you know, in other words, the music, because one of the great frustrations for jazz musicians is they arrive somewhere and, you know, they've got to bring the sound system up to scale, and, you know, it's exhausting, it's frustrating, it's sometimes not even successful. So I know, knowing my musician friends, the idea that they could play somewhere where they could count, just that alone, where they could count on superb, consistent sound engineering, that's huge right there.
It's essential. It really is. On last year's Blue Note at Sea cruise, our special guest was Pat Metheny, and one of the reasons that he had never been on a cruise before is because he was concerned about the sound. So after his first show, I am standing backstage with David Sanborn, who was another performer and evidently one of Pat's good friends, and Pat, who is not a person of huge amount of words, comes off stage, and I said, how's it going? And he says, I got to tell you, Carnegie Hall, and he named one other place that neither of us can remember, Sanborn and I, are the only two places this year that I think had a better sound than this auditorium. So that says something to me.
That's huge, and I'm looking at the lineup for this year's Jazz Cruise, which, by the way, runs February 3rd through the 10th. You've got a lot going on. One of the things that caught my eye is you've got a lot of New Orleans stuff going on. You've got the Preservation Hall Jazz Band, which is, if people haven't seen that, if you're a jazz lover, you have to see that. And you have the great drummer Herman Riley, who everybody needs to see him too.
Well, we're going to New Orleans, and that's the reason why. This is the first time ever that one of our ports of call will be New Orleans, and we're going to be there for 27 hours, and we have a full array of events planned for folks. But we are bringing a Preservation Hall Jazz Band onto the ship, and we're bringing Herman Riley onto the ship for some shows. So you don't even have to get off the ship to enjoy New Orleans.
That's great. And I have to say this, I love New Orleans. I've been there. I can't even count the number of times. I spent a lot of time there after the flood, probably cumulatively a year, year and a half in months, 3 months here, 2 months there, and I love New Orleans. But it can be a tricky place to go to as a tourist. I just have to say that the hotels are a little bit uneven, and it's a wonderful city. I recommend everybody go. But the idea that you could be living in luxury and get to hear this music in the port of New Orleans is quite a thing. I want to talk about some of the other people who are going to be performing. So you mentioned Randy Brecker, Monty Alexander. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Arturo Sandoval. The Clayton brothers, who I had the privilege of seeing in the city at the Jazz Standards 2 summers ago. Incredible guys. Incredible band. Marcus Miller. John Pizzarelli, who I love. He's sort of a local guy here, but he's a phenomenal guitar player. The Cookers, who I just saw last weekend. I would go on a cruise just to see them. This is an all-star group of great. I did an age check on these guys, and they don't talk about their age, but they should be bragging. These guys are in their 70s. Cecil McBee is in his 80s, and they have as much, probably more, vitality than just about any band of any age you can think of. These guys were cooking. I mean, that's literally. And it just goes on and on. So basically, I guess it's kind of like maybe a jazz city at sea with really good sound.
And good food. And then the other aspect that is very difficult to explain to people, one of the coolest parts about the cruise is your fellow passengers. You're going to be on board with 2,000 people of like mind who are there because they love the music, and the level of respect and the level of inclusiveness and just the entire demeanor of the ship takes on a whole new meaning for anybody who has cruised before. You know that you get sort of an oleo of folks on a regular cruise, and some of that is good and some of that is not so good. But here, they're all bound together, and it almost acts as an element of a restraint upon and against any kind of bad behavior, because you don't want to stand out for the wrong reasons, okay? And it's really kind of amazing how that works. And I love our guests. 12, I'm going to say this, and then I'll say it again, because it almost sounds almost impossible. 12,000 people have sailed on our jazz cruises 4 or more times.
Wow.
12,000 people have sailed on our jazz cruises 4 or more times. Okay?
Wow.
Now, if that's not a testimony to both jazz and these cruises and just the whole bit, then I don't know what is. For so many people, they come on the cruise and they see their friends who they only see when they're on the cruise. It's like the movie Same Time Next Year, or like going to camp. You know, you got camp buddies or college buddies or whatever. Well, these people have cruise buddies, and it's fun. When I was at the Monterey Jazz Festival, we had a booth, and all these cruisers come up and say hello, and they're wearing the hats and the T-shirts and the other paraphernalia that we give out, and they're wearing them proudly because they want people to know that they've been on the jazz cruise, they've been on Blue Note at Sea, and it really is a tremendous sense of pride that I feel doing it.
Well, I can see, and I've been in a bunch of businesses over the years. I've been a jazz fan since I was in high school, and I started Jazz on the Tube just for fun, and then it became a hobby, and next thing I knew it was a business. And I have to say, of all the businesses I've been in, and I've been in a lot, I get no greater pleasure than dealing with jazz fans.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't get any better. I mean, maybe there's some other group that I haven't discovered, but in terms of reliably meeting just nice, interesting people, the jazz world is the best that I've encountered.
I think it is, without a doubt, the least judgmental, group of people that I've ever met, because that reflects jazz. It doesn't matter what you look like or anything else. If you get on the bandstand and you can play, that's all that matters. And that's how jazz fans view life, okay? I think the world of it, okay?
Yep, and we're all bound together by a love of the music.
Yep.
Hey, let's talk about the Blue Note at Sea. You got a great lineup there. I see Chick Corea, 22 Grammy Awards, but even if he didn't get one, we all know who he is and how important he is. I see Marcus Miller. I see Dee Dee Bridgewater, NEA Jazz Master. David Sanborn. Charles Lloyd, another NEA Jazz Master. Dr. Lonnie Smith, another NEA Jazz Master, and on it goes. So this is another amazing lineup. Now, is there a difference between the orientation of the Blue Note at Sea versus Jazz Cruise? Is there?
I think there is. The Jazz Cruise is intended to be a straight-ahead jazz program. And if you look at the artists that are performing, though they may do other things, they are primarily straight-ahead jazz guys.
Mm-hmm.
Blue Note is intended to be just a tad more contemporary, a tad more, I don't want to say modern, because that makes it sound like the other isn't modern, but a tad more unconventional, if you will. I mean, you would not consider Chick Corea to be a straight-ahead player, notwithstanding the fact that he undoubtedly can play that.
Sure.
A Robert Glasper, Dee Dee Bridgewater, Layla Hathaway, Dr. Lonnie Smith, Leslie Odom Jr. is a brand new jazz guy. But this cruise has 2 Tony Award winners, 4 NEA Jazz Masters, and winners of almost 60 Grammys. Okay, and it's done more of a show basis and less of a festival basis. We're going to have big shows every night, and as an example, Dee Dee Bridgewater, who's been on the Jazz Cruise before, the Straight Ahead Jazz Cruise, she comes on with a trio here. She's going to have her full band, and it's going to be 90 minutes of her thing. Layla will have her full band, okay? And we have the Blue Note All-Stars. We have an amazing lineup of those guys as well. And last year was the first year for that cruise, and I'll tell you, as far as I'm concerned, and I hate choosing among my cruises because that's sort of like choosing among your children. But that week was the best music week that I can ever remember, just because these guys, it's just a little different, because they're one way of distinguishing the cruises is the Jazz Cruise. They play tunes that everybody knows, standards, if you will. Whereas on Blue Note at Sea, it's a lot more original compositions.
Okay.
And that is one way of defining it.
And the name Blue Note, are you doing it in affiliation with Blue Note Records or Blue Note Club, or?
It is being jointly produced by us, Blue Note Records. Don Was is on the ship and does interviews, and with the Blue Note Clubs, all of it.
Okay.
So it's a high-end production.
And that one is January 27th through February 3rd. We're talking about 2018.
It is the week immediately before the Jazz Cruise. They're on the same ship, and over 200 people have already booked both.
Well, they know how to live.
Yep.
Which brings up an interesting point. Sometimes we deprive ourselves unnecessarily. I remember a friend of mine, and I wish I could remember the name of the artist, but anyway, she was going to hear one of her concerts, and I said, well, she's doing 3 shows. Why don't you go to all 3?
Mm-hmm.
And it had never, and she loves this artist. The sun rose and set by her. And I said, you've got the money. You've got the time. She goes, well, I never thought of it. I said, well, why don't you think of it? So she did. She went to all 3 shows, something she never would have done, it didn't even enter her mind. And she said it was one of the highlights of her life. And I know what that's like. because I did that once myself. I sat through every show that Arthur Blythe did at the Village Vanguard once for a whole week, and I still remember it. I did it on my birthday, and my birthday week, and it was a great thing. So there may be people who've never thought of doing something like this, and we have to look at what are we here for? How long are we going to be here? What do we love? And give this some consideration. I love the 200 people that are going on both weeks. I think that's incredible. And the one that goes first is the Blue Note, and that's going out of Fort Lauderdale. Now, of course, we're talking here in 2017 in the fall. We've just had a bunch of hurricanes. How does that affect your plans or your itinerary or anything?
Thus far, we don't have to make any changes. Obviously, we're going to be looking at that as time goes by. But the resiliency of that area, you have to remember that these cruises are the lifeblood of these cities and our country. So they're going to figure out a way to be ready. But if not, then we work with the cruise lines to find alternatives. Okay.
And of course, they've been down this road before, and they know how to handle things.
Yep.
And of course, just so people know, because not everybody knows meteorology, the hurricanes stop basically in November, and they're done. They don't come back until May. So there's
we don't sail during hurricane season, right?
Yeah, there's no danger of a hurricane during this. And I want to say something. During we were very involved post Katrina. And one of the things, not only being there and assisting artists and putting on events and doing all kinds of things, but also encouraging people to visit New Orleans. We're kind of in the same position with Cuba and some other places. Believe it or not, and this is not something I'm not talking out of my hat, this is literal truth, and you kind of alluded to it a minute ago. One of the ways to support these places that have been hit so hard is to go there. I mean, because tourism is a huge part of their economy. I know, for instance, Cuba had a bunch of really high-end resorts on the North Coast that were just ravaged. They will have them ready, I've heard, in time for the tour. It will happen. They will get it together because it's so important to them.
They really don't have a choice. I mean, they absolutely have to, or else they aren't going to survive.
So if you're looking for another reason to cruise and to visit the Caribbean this winter especially, is being a tourist down there after an event like this is a big help to the economy. It's income coming in, it's jobs, it's exactly what's needed right now. The terrible thing that happens, and it happened in New Orleans and it might happen in the Caribbean, is people stay away. And that's the wrong thing to do. That's absolutely the wrong thing to do. The best thing to do is go. And yeah, you'll be very appreciated too. You'll find. So we're talking about 2 cruises now. This is by the way something that happens every year. I mean, and has been going on for years since your mom's.
This will be the 17th sailing of the Jazz Cruise. 17 years in a row. We've been doing a Smooth Jazz Cruises 2018. We'll be celebrating our 15th anniversary of those sailings as well.
Okay. And we're going to put links below, and also we're going to tag something on the end of this with the links as well for you to go to. But basically, it's Blue Note at Sea. It's the Jazz Cruise. For those of you who are interested in smooth jazz, there's a Smooth Jazz Cruise as well that you can look up, also from Entertainment Cruise Productions. And it's exciting stuff. I may not sound it, but I turned 58 literally today. Today's my birthday.
God. Yeah, happy birthday.
Yeah. Thank you very much. And I have to say something. I used to love going to festivals. And
they're tough.
I don't want to be walking through the mud and being baked in the sun and being jammed like a sardine, and I also don't, and you said that, you alluded to this earlier, honestly, I don't want to go to a jazz festival where, half the acts are rock and roll and hip hop.
Exactly.
I'm sorry, I just don't want to do it. So the idea that I could go somewhere, be in a comfortable room, in a comfortable bed with excellent food, excellent sound, I don't have to roam around all over the place. I can get right to the music easily. This is starting to sound really good to me as an alternative to the way I've been doing things. So, Michael, I want to thank you so much for, first of all, for doing this.
Yep.
You're helping the musicians, you're helping the music, and also thank you for spending some time with us. And also I want to point out that for the next couple of months, these cruises are sponsors of Jazz on the Tube. So if you're going into this, make sure that when you register, that you let them know, hey, we heard about this from Jazz on the Tube, because that's very important.
It'd be very helpful to us, yes.
Yeah. Well,
thank you, sir.
Thanks. Yeah, thank you. And
happy birthday.
And,
oh,
thank you very much.
I would sing happy birthday, but that would ruin your birthday.
Okay. That's why you're the producer of the show. And
exactly correct.
I'm in the same boat. Well, thank you, Michael, and best wishes with everything and with all you do.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.